What's going on, everybody? As you can see, we have a completely different setup today. I have an all new video series that I'm going to start doing on the channel. This is called First Impressions, and the point of this is to talk about series that don't have physical releases yet, and I'm going to try to keep these videos kind of short. The one we're going to be talking about today is a series called Goku Raku Gai. I think that's what it's called. I don't know if I messed the name up or not because it's in Japanese, but it's Goku Raku Gai, and I have enjoyed every second of it, and it's something that I really want to talk about with you all. I'm gonna maybe do more of these, in the future, as a way to just break things up, and this is gonna be the setup for when I do those videos, when I do the first impressions videos, and I have another series that I'm gonna be doing that's also going to have this specific setup, just to break away from always being in the same sort of space when I do pretty much all of my videos. I want to just have a little bit of a difference, even though this background right here is always in the videos. But let's kind of take it in a different direction this time around with with these first impressions videos. And my first thoughts on Goku Rakugai is that it is an incredible series. As of right now, it is only 9 chapters deep. Chapter 10 is supposed to drop in August. Right now we are in June. As of the making of this video, I think today is like June 23rd or something like that. And by the time the video actually drops, it'll probably be like the end of June. And yeah, and then we'll still have like all of July, and then August is when the next chapter drops. But at least it'll give you time to read the first 9 volumes if you haven't read them yet, if you haven't even heard of the story yet. And the first physical volume of this series is supposed to drop in like August of 24, so that'll be something to pre-order and look forward to next year, because this is going to be a gorgeous series to hold in your hands when it drops. So far with this story, the characters are something that is referred to within this world. They are something called troubleshooters, and that is Alma and Miss Tao. Alma is like a 15-year-old dude, and Miss Tao, I think, is maybe like in her 20s or something like that. And they essentially work in tandem to take out these creatures called magma. And Alma, who is the lead boy, who's like 15, is like part human, part magma. And that's something that you'll see in certain random like shonen stories where like the lead boy or lead girl or whatever is like half of whatever. They're half demon, half insert random being that was created for and exists, in this story verse. And in this case, he's half MAGA. And there's another one, what was it? Inkemono Jihen. There's a dude too who's kind of like that, where he's like half human and half something else. I forgot what it was. I've only read the first volume of Kemono Jihen, but I remember that story had a similar premise with this kid who's like half this thing and half another. But this story feels like it's gonna have like a serious emotional punch. And like the first 9 volumes and the first 9 chapters that I've already read, there's already been a scene like I don't want to like get too heavy into spoilers, because I'm trying to convince people to read the series, or if you've already read it, you probably just want to like hear somebody else's opinion over it. And yeah, I loved it. Yeah, the first 9 chapters so far have been absolutely incredible. Like the artwork is solid. The story kind of meanders a little bit in the beginning, I think, because they're just kind of setting up the world and setting up how the world works. And so far, that world building has been absolutely gorgeous, and you get a feel for the beings that inhabit this world. And the boss, of these 2 troubleshooters, Alma and Miss Tao, is a beast man. And he's like a wolf type of dude. He looks he's just like really jolly though. He's like super jolly, and he's like he's the absolute just flipped, just like the absolute reverse of, if you've played Elden Ring, Blythe. Like if you've played Elden Ring, Blythe is just like brooding all the time, and the dude in this story is a good boy. He's like the exact opposite of Blythe. And that's another thing, dude. Like every character so far, I don't think there's been a single character that I've met that I thought was weak in this whole manga. And the 9 chapters that I've read so far, none of them blend. None of them like blend into the scenery. Everyone has a pretty strong independent voice. And Alma and Miss Tao both have pretty strong independent voices. There's this other girl that you meet who is a lot of fun too, and she's like the tsundere of the series. And then we meet this other girl who as like a pretty sad story that becomes like really good friends with Alma, and some things happen there that I'm not going to get too into because, like I said, I don't want to start spoiling this series. But we do get a villain like halfway through it. I think like chapter 6. I don't quote me on that. I think it's like around chapter 6 we get a villain, and we get kind of like a villain association, and that's kind of like where it started opening up, because I thought about that was as I was reading it. I was like thinking, like there hasn't yet been any real villain introduced. Like you get, that there's these MAGA, and you get the different little things that are happening with MAGA and little incidents here or there, but there hadn't been like a central villain introduced yet. And we got the central villain, and so far we haven't seen this villain in full action, but you get the feeling from this one scene where he gets attacked that he is going to be a tough dude. I forgot what his name was, but I'll put a picture of him right there. And he's got like a whole little association of people that he rules over or something like that, or he's associated with, and I'm really excited to see where that's going to go. Everything so far just feels like it's building to something, and it feels like it's going to get emotional. Like at the end of it, those last like 3-ish chapters, we get hit, like we got like a gut punch, from these things that happen. And I'm not going to say what happens if you haven't read it yet, but it feels like it's going to be a really strong story. And maybe once the physical volume of it drops, maybe I'll do like a Let's review or something, and then we'll just go like full spoilers for what happened in these last chapters, how many ever chapters end up being, in the first volume. And I really don't want the story to get canceled, because it's still really early on. It's only like 9 chapters deep. But I mean, the fact that it already has, a physical release coming next year, I hope that's an indication that it's not going to get canceled. And I feel like it has a pretty solid reception, that it's had a pretty solid reception. I see a lot of people talking about it on Instagram, and that's a good sign. I mean, if people are talking about it, that means there's a fan base behind it. If there's enough, of a fan base, it'll keep going, and it'll build an even bigger fan base. And hopefully we'll maybe one day we'll get an anime or something, and then it'll be solidified that it's not going to get canceled. Because I was thinking about it as I was reading it. Yeah, I mean, so far, dude, I think this story is an absolute winner. I love the art. I love the way that it's drawn. I love the action. The characters, as I've said, are solid. It has no qualms whatsoever about showing violence, so that's really cool. Even I think it's probably going to end up being like a 16 plus story, I think, or maybe like 16 plus possibly, just because of like certain acts of violence, and there's some blood and strangulations and whatnot. And aesthetically, it is, it's gorgeous. I love the artwork and the paints, the how like just different mangas like when there's like that break, into chapter 2 or into chapter 3 or whatever, it'll show the characters dressed in just like some random fashion that isn't typically the way that those characters dress, but just to kind of add some color to the world and show you how those characters would actually look. Because how in manga everything's just like black and white or whatever, you don't always see the way that the characters would look until you see those color panels and they show you what the character would actually look like. Otherwise, we're just kind of guessing. Unless they're on the cover, you know what I mean? Unless they're like on the cover of the manga, then you kind of see, what they look like. I love the relationship, between Miss Tao and Alma. Where like she essentially is his guardian or something, and they work together in a sense. Like Alma's blood, he can use that as a weapon in the way that Power in Chainsaw Man, uses her blood as a weapon. And he even makes blood bullets for Miss Tao, and Miss Tao's thing is a gun. And I love the way they work together. There's definitely a lot that can be done, with what's going on right now. And, once the villains get really going, because as of right now, the villains have only really been introduced. You see like 2 of them, commit acts of violence. You see like 2 of the villains commit acts of violence, but for the most part, you don't really see the villains in action. So there's no real association with how strong they are, compared to one another or anything like that. And I'm curious to see, how that's going to go, how that hierarchy works, with the villains, and who's going to be the first one to fight our two leads, and what's going to happen. And like I said, I feel like this story feels like it's going to get really emotional. Like I can see, things happening, that it's going to get dark and it's going to get like ugly. I can feel that it's going to get ugly, dude. If it already in the first 9 chapters has had some ugly things happen, I feel like, yeah, this story has no qualms about doing those things, and I'm grateful that there's more manga that's taking chances like that, because I feel like there was a while where like manga was like playing it safe, and nothing would happen, none of the characters would get killed, and like Tatsuki Fujimoto is one of those creators that threw that out the window and did not care about killing your favorite characters, and that's something that I want to see going forward, and I think that this manga has the potential to make that a reality within this story. And it starts off light and fun and whatnot, but I can see it definitely over time getting more emotional and getting darker, and once we get really introduced to this world. And I'd really like to see more of Miss Tao's backstory. We've heard a bunch about Alma and not so much about Miss Tao. Like, she's still kind of mysterious to me, and I want to see what's going on with her, where her story's gonna go. And yeah, for the most part, I am on board 100% of the way, dude. I can't wait to see, what's going to happen, and I love seeing these characters, have fun, because it's not just dark, it's not just brooding, though it does feel like that, is coming, and it's well-rounded so far, and that's one of my favorite things, is a story that can balance, fun, it can balance action, it can balance drama, and it can make the world go, from fun and jovial to extremely dark at the drop of a hat. And that's something that, like, Black Lagoon, to me, has been able to do, and, like, Dan to Dan has been able to do that. Tatsuki Fujimoto in general, with everything he does, he can just go from, like, the jolliest thing ever to just, like, the most brutally depressing thing ever at the drop of a hat. Those are my first impressions after reading the first 9 volumes of Goku Raku Gai, and I am 100% ready for more of it. I'm going to be doing another one of these videos for Beat and Motion at some point. I'm not really sure when, because I've really enjoyed that series and I want to do a video about it. If you enjoyed this, please let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this series. Are you reading any stories on the Viz app or the Shonen Jump app? What are your thoughts on those stories? Should I check anything out that doesn't have a physical volume yet in English? If you think about anything, let me know, or if you just want to tell me what kind of day you're having today, just let me know in the comments what's going on in your life. How are things going? I hope that you are doing well. I hope that everyone you love is doing well as well. And with that, I'm just going to say a big ol' thank you so much for hanging out with me. As always, it means the absolute world that you took time out of your busy schedule to spend it with me for, I guess, 15 minutes or however long this video is going to be. So yeah, please take care of yourselves until next time we meet, maybe next week or maybe in a couple of weeks. Whenever we meet again, please take care.
By the hands of God, I stand as a wrench between your wheeling cog, fastening my belt, bracing myself to withstand against all odds. Himself shadow runners, battle ready, murder dogs, rip the skin off your horses, triumph and smash the sorceress, lethal forces. The failure of your ambitions is more painful than divorces. Smash your dome piece on the doorway, when the door hits, that's it, call it quits. Zipped up in plastic, cremated, melted like elastic. Dreams don't mean shit, in this life they don't exist.